Welcome everyone to the COP28 Blue Zone site induction. If you're here today, you're a member of Identity's production team. You're either a contractor working for Identity, or you're a member of one of our stakeholders that will also be operating inside the Blue Zone during the COP28 project. What we'll go through here today is the health safety requirements for the site induction for the Blue Zone. The induction purpose today is to provide those entering the COP28 Blue Zone with site-specific health and safety information. It's to ensure those working for Identity can do so with a safe and productive outcome, and to provide clear context on project information, site layout, management supervision, site requirements, and emergency procedures. Before we need to talk about anything, we need to talk about the COP28 project itself, make sure we understand exactly what is COP28 UAE and the significance of this project. So COP28 UAE will be an event for the United Nations where all the world leaders will be coming together to discuss climate change and sustainability. These conversations and the outcomes and actions that from them will shape the future of the planet for the next decade and will affect our children and our children's children. So it's a large, significant project. We need to understand, though, that this project can't be successful and the outcomes from it can't positively impact the planet and the future generations of the planet without all the work we're doing here today. So all the work that we're contributing to on this project, all of you, regardless of the work activity you're doing here, will be contributing to the success of this outcome of this event. So it's important to understand we are all working together underneath the United Nations as a united work front to provide this successful event for the future of mankind. Equally so as the importance and the significance of this project is that the eyes of the world are on us. We will have all the world leaders here all at the exact same time during the few weeks of November and December during the event. As a result of this event is also overseen by the United Nations Department of Safety and Security, which requires the highest level of safety and security around the world. The United Nations Department of Safety and Security combine the health and safety and security standards from all around the world, and all world countries, and find the highest level across all platforms, and require it here on this project too. So what we'll go through here in this part of this induction for the project here is how we will be achieving our compliance with these site safety requirements, how Identity will support all of you in maintaining and achieving a health and safety workplace. When we talk about the Blue Zone, first we need to explain exactly what it is. So the Blue Zone is identified here with this blue perimeter line. For those that aren't familiar, this is an overview of some of the Expo City Dubai site. We can see here at the top here is the Dubai Exhibition Centre. Down here in the bottom left is mobility. We have the Al Wasl district as well. So during this event, the site will be divided into two separate areas, one called the Green Zone and one called the Blue Zone. The Green Zone is an area for the public access during the event of COP28, whereas the Blue Zone will be surrounded by this secure perimeter fencing, excluding all public access to this part of the site. Inside the Blue Zone is the area where the world leaders will be coming to have their delegations regarding climate change and sustainability. Inside the Blue Zone is where the United Nations Department of Safety and Security expect the highest level of safety and security to be upheld. And inside the Blue Zone is where Identity. Here today in the induction, it's because you'll also be working inside the Blue Zone area, and you need to understand the requirements inside this zone during the COP28 event. When we talk about Identity as a project management team, so Identity is a global event management company successfully delivering COP26 in Glasgow a few years ago and several global events since that time. On this project, we have a large project management team with multiple diverse work streams here to support the project. Project management team is designed, and primary function here is to deliver this project safely and on time. And it's important to understand that the significant size of the project management team overseeing this project. The project management team have all the answers for this project, so we encourage everybody working on site, if you're ever unsure of what work activity you're doing and what work activity is being done around you, to please speak with a member of our production management team. If they don't know, their management definitely will know. There's not a question on this project that can go unanswered. Please make sure I understand that the members of the Identity production management team are here leading this project to deliver it safely and on time. Equally inside the Identity project management team is our health, safety, security and environment management team, led by the head of HSSE, which is myself. I'm Ian James Welsh, and I'm the head of HSSE for Identity on the COP28 project. Management. And inside the team and across all divisions here, we have upwards of over 60 health, safety, security, and environment officers placed strategically throughout the project. The primary function of these HSSE officers is to provide all of you with support. They're out there to ensure that all of you are working to the highest levels of safety and security required during the COP28 event. They're here to support all of you and give you the necessary guidance you need to work and comply with these levels of standards. It's important to understand that they are well resourced from both the international and local markets, and underneath the jurisdiction of myself and training from Identity as to what the requirements are for this project. Any advice that they give you is both in the best interest of yourself for your own health and safety on the site, but also for your company and your contractors that you may be working for. You can follow the guidance from our health and safety, security, and environment officers to ensure compliance on this project across all required standards. This will avoid any injuries and incidents on site to the workforce, but also any non-conformances to the companies that you're working for. So please make sure you follow any of the advice and guidance of the HSSE officers out on site. They're looking out for all of you. They're easily identifiable. They have identity high-vis vests on at all times, which say health and safety or fire safety on the back of their vests. And they'll be easily sourced throughout the whole project due to the significant size and numbers of the health and safety force out on site. Equally, if you have any concerns about your own health and safety on site, please make sure you reach out with the HSSE officers to provide the relevant guidance needed and support to receive to make sure you're working in a healthy and safe environment. On this project, the biggest risk to the project is the event deadline itself, where we'll be experiencing an increasing level of risk and project pressure. The best way we can ensure that we have a safe and healthy workplace is if we're all operating underneath the same collective attitude. The one collective attitude of the entire workforce, from management down to the workforce, ensures that we're all working in a safe process. We're mitigating any risks to the project. So on this project, we're operating under this project attitude here, which is make safe and proceed. Make safe and proceed is a process garnered behind efficiency. We're looking to ensure that health and safety can provide an efficient project to make sure we deliver it on time and safely. We're not looking to delay the project and create any obstacles in the process, but we are expecting everybody to work safely to get the work done. So suffice to say that you'll never be stopped on this project by health and safety in the work activity you're doing and delayed anywhere behind your deadlines if you've made it safe. So please make sure before you proceed with your work activity, you make every effort to make it safe. If you can provide evidence and assurance that you've made the work activity safe, you'll always be open and free to proceed. Any advice given from the HSSE officers on site will be in alignment with this project attitude too. We'll always be out there making sure to make the work activity safe so that it can proceed, so that you can get your work done on time and we can deliver the project safely and efficiently as needed. So please make sure, if nothing else from the induction process, you take away this one project attitude and apply it to all your work activity during here at the COP28 event. The site rules of this project cover 2 separate venues. So for those that are here part of the workforce, you'll be going through 2 separate venue inductions as well. But for those that are here just doing the introduction identity induction, you need to be aware of these 2 items as well. So the Blue Zone covers 2 separate venues. It covers Expo City Dubai as one venue, but also the Dubai Exhibition Centre as a second venue underneath the jurisdiction of the Dubai World Trade Centre. Both of these venues have their own health and safety induction, including site and venue rules and requirements when working inside of each of these venues. Some of these rules are slightly different between these 2 venues, and it's a requirement that everybody understands this. The HSSE officers out on site are very much aware of each of the requirements in both of these venues and will be giving guidance in alignment with each of those. It's important to understand that these rules may be different as you go between the 2 separate venues, and you need to make sure you're complying with the relevant stakeholders in this process. Further details can be provided in the advice to say, please make sure you follow the guidance of the HSE officers on site. The welfare of the workforce is the highest priority of not only Identity, COP28, but also the UAE entirely. Focusing on improvement of worker welfare has been a focus in the UAE for quite a few years now, and we're looking to continue on that legacy. So to achieve this across the project, we have a significant number of welfare facilities, as you can see. There'll be more here installed throughout the project. There'll never be a welfare The welfare facilities are air-conditioned break rooms, prayer rooms, meal rooms, washrooms, toilets, and drinking water. Please make sure that you're utilising all the welfare spaces out there to make sure you're getting the right rest and recovery, to make sure that the workforce is being well cared for. A safe and healthy and cared for workforce is an efficient workforce. We're looking to ensure that the workforce is here to help drive this project to its successful completion. As we mentioned at the start of the induction, the identity is in control of the majority of the area in the blue zone, but not in control of the entire blue zone. So these smaller areas here identified on this map are the actual areas identity is in direct control of. So inside these areas is where all of you today will be working if you're one of Identity's contractors or part of the project management team. However, it's likely that there may be some work activity that you need to complete outside of some of these areas. We just ask that if you're operating outside of the areas that Identity in direct control of, that you work in cooperation with those other stakeholders as well. Like we said at the start of the induction, we're looking to create a united workforce here, a united effort on the projects. So please make sure you're aware of the work activity that you're conducting and which work areas that you're working in and who holds ultimate responsibility over these areas. Part of the requirements here for COP28 with Identity is we've identified emergency evacuation points, as you can see marked here by the standard green assembly point. Please make sure you understand where these assembly points are with any of the work activity that you're doing. Before you enter these spaces, please make sure you familiarise yourself with where your nearest emergency assembly point is. So if in the event of an emergency, you have a clear understanding of where it is you need to head to assemble. The emergency response process on this project. So following this process on this project, it's very important to understand that the quickest way and the best way to mitigate against an emergency impact is the response time. So the sooner we can respond to an emergency, the better off we are in ensuring that we have a low impact to both injury and incident of the emergency. To be able to achieve this, we need to utilise all of you on site. All of you on site are the eyes and ears of the project. We need to make sure that all of you have the understanding that you are both empowered and have the responsibility to notify us of any emergencies. So that being said, any person who first becomes aware of an emergency must immediately call 999. 999 is the emergency service number here in Dubai. We need to make sure that we mobilise the emergency services and notify them of the emergency here at Expo City for the COP28 event. The next step will be to notify the nearest supervisor or health and safety officer. So the expectation is if anyone witnesses an emergency, whether you're directly involved in it or just witnessing it, you have full responsibility and expectation to call 999, tell them you've witnessed an emergency, it's at Expo City, and then tell your nearest supervisor or health and safety officer. Next step that we take from that, the health and safety officer or the supervisors will be notified of the emergency. We will then immediately contact the emergency services. So both Expo City Dubai and the Dubai World Trade Center have their own emergency services here on site at each of the venues, and they're in communication with 999 as well. So if 999 is called, they will contact these emergency services and we will contact them as well. At which point we'll also notify identity management and we'll triangulate a quick and efficient response to the emergency. The next action that we will take is the supervisor or health and safety officer who's been aware of the alert will then direct all persons to the safest emergency assembly point. We'll make safe the area if it's safe to do so and administer any first aid if it's needed, while we await for the arrival of the emergency services, both from 999 and from the DWTC or ECD services. So it's important to understand that we have a three-step process here for emergency response, and that everyone cooperates in this process during this event. So please make sure you notify anyone of an emergency, call 999 immediately, and then notify us that the call's been made and allow us to implement the second and third step. Incident management is equally important on this project for a few reasons, but they're slightly different to emergencies. So all emergencies need to be notified to the health and safety team as well. We approach this by understanding that every incident is an opportunity for improvement. If something's gone wrong in the workplace, it means we need to know what happened. We need to know what happened so we can put in a corrective action and make sure it doesn't happen again. Given the nature of this project and the deadline that we're on and the very fast and dynamic pace of the project, near miss today is likely to be an incident tomorrow. So not reporting a near miss or a minor incident is inviting a larger scale incident or injury to occur to somebody tomorrow. Could be yourself, could be one of your colleagues, or could be somebody from a completely different contractor. So it's important to understand that if anyone who's aware of an incident must first become aware of an incident, they must notify the nearest supervisor and health and safety officer to ensure the health and safety of the persons involved, and the supervisor or health and safety officer are responsible for administering first aid. Equally important is the incident reporting process. COP28 and the United Nations Department of Safety and Security require reporting of all incidents during this event so they can track incident statistics. All COP events report all their incidents and then carry over those learnings which we've adopted into our risk process here at Identity for COP28. So it's important to understand we honour this process and we report all incidents on site. To be able to do this, we need information from all of you. You're the subject matter experts out in the field. You understand what happened with the incident, who was involved, what happened, and what's the best corrective action for that. So we ask that we follow, you follow this process and you cooperate with us when we compile the incident reporting process. Equally so, all serious incidents must also be reported up to COP28 and the 2 venues within 24 hours so that they understand the incidents that are occurring inside their workplaces as well. Any serious incident must be investigated to ensure the accuracy of corrective actions. This is the one time where health and safety will actually stop the work. We'll temporarily pause the work activity in that immediate area just to secure the scene and be able to preserve the area while we conduct our investigation. Photographs will be taken of the scene to be able to capture exactly what went wrong and the state of damage. And we'll be asking for written witness statements as well. So it's important to understand if it's a serious incident like an emergency, we ask that you cooperate in this process as well, so we can maximise our learning potential from any of these incidents and ensure the ongoing health and safety of everybody in the workplace. We need to talk about some site risks at the moment. So on this project, there are some key critical risks on this project that we need to identify here and speak briefly about. So the likelihood of an incident occurring in the workplace to any of you here in this induction today is likely to be a result of one of these key risks here. And the work activity you're doing out on site will likely cross over to some or all of these risks. So when we're approaching work activity on site for COP28, we want to approach it with what we call risk-based thinking. So risk-based thinking is thinking about what risk is it to myself, is there from the work activity that I'm doing? What risk is there to somebody else nearby from the work activity I'm doing? And what risk is the work activity somebody else is doing near me to cause to myself? So if we're approaching this with this make safe and proceed approach and attitude, and we're approaching everything with a risk-based thinking mentality, we should be able to identify the risk before they incur any incident or injury to us. So on this project, electrical safety is a very key critical risk for a very number of reasons. First and foremost being that electricity, when it comes in contact with the human body, almost always ends in certain death. We need to make sure that we respect electricity for the ever-present fatal hazard that it is. Equally so too on this event, Expo City Dubai itself was designed as a venue to host Expo 2020, which means a lot of the electrical infrastructure during that event was embedded inside the ground and inside the walls of the venue itself. COP28 is an overlay event, which means here on this project, a lot of electrical infrastructure for this event is overlaid on the top of the ground on the external perimeters of the building, which means that they're more exposed to the members of the public and to the workforce and those of us that are working on the project. They are all insulated, but they are still more accessible. Equally so too, there is more electricity running through this project for this event than there was during Expo 2020. So we need to understand and respect that there's a high volume of electricity on this project. There's a lot of accessible infrastructure here, and we need to make sure we're treating it with the utmost respect and we're staying clear of it at all times, and always assuming every electrical infrastructure is live, but also ensuring that our electrical equipment is safe to use as well. Fire safety is equally important on this project for a few reasons. Not only is it a key critical risk in this region, but it's also an identified risk by the United Nations Department of Safety and Security for all COP events. We're building a lot of small-scale meeting rooms inside of some venue rooms, which creates a lot of congestion and creates a lot of potential for fire risk if there was ever a fire. The reason why this is a key critical risk and why my team has 30% of the team are fire safety officers is the difference between a fire warden and a fire safety officer is that a fire warden is somebody who's trained to respond when there is a fire, but a fire safety officer is someone who's here to prevent a fire. So please ask that you follow the guidance of the fire safety team out on site and make sure any advice that they give you about mitigating against fires are followed to make sure we have no fires on this project. Temporary structures are a third key critical risk on this project. Temporary structures can be unpredictable at the best of times, but we have some significantly high-scale contractors working on these here on the project, but they are focused on the risks of their own work activity for the temporary structures, which means they're not expecting anybody to be in these spaces during the erection and construction of the temporary structures. So we ask that during these phases of the erection and construction of the temporary structures, if you're not working on them yourselves, that you stay clear of these spaces. Once the temporary structures are complete and signed off by engineers to confirm that they're safe, we'll be giving access to everybody to work inside those spaces. But during the construction and erection, we just ask that you stay clear of the temporary structures. Working height is another key critical risk here for a few reasons, but the most common one is the most oversight when it comes to working height is things falling from height. People think working at height and they think about people falling from height. More incidents and injuries occur from working height from things falling on people than from people falling. We need to be mindful of when we're working in height, of anything that we're working with. So tools and equipment that we have in our hands that we're doing for the work activity we're doing it while we're at height, what the potential of those falling objects could cause to somebody beneath us. Equally so, if we're working around people that are working at height, whether they're up on a scaffold or a mobile elevated work platform, then we need to be thinking about what work activity they're doing and could anything that they're working on fall onto us. Make sure we're keeping safe distance from all working at height. Plant and people are equally important on this project for a few main reasons, in that when plant comes in contact with people, plant machinery always wins. So we need to make sure that we're keeping people and machinery separate at all times, but also understanding the risk associated with that. The best two approaches to this we can explain is that if you're a pedestrian walking around machinery, never assume that the machine operator knows that you're there. They don't. They're thinking about operating the machine and assuming obviously nobody is walking around this big machine while I'm operating it. That being said too, if you're operating the machine, do not assume that no one will be walking around you. Just because it's big and it's loud and it beeps and it blinks doesn't mean people are staying away from it. They may be closer than you think. So it's important that both plant and people make sure we're keeping ever vigilant understanding of the area that we're in, making sure we're keeping them as separate as possible so we don't have any injuries or contact between machinery and people. Lifting and loading is also a key critical risk on this project, primarily for the main phenomenon of what we call load shifting. So load shifting is when the load is put on the delivery vehicle at its place of origin, and then it travels to site. When it travels to site, we have no control over the direction that the driver takes, how they drive the vehicle, the route that they take. However, we do recognise that during this process, the loads can shift on the back of the vehicle. When the loads shift on the back of the vehicle, sometimes they become unsecured, which means when it arrives on site and people are eager to go up to the delivery vehicle and open the delivery vehicle up, that the loads are sometimes loose and can pose the risk of falling out and injuring people. Equally so with load shifting is about when we're lifting it up with forklifts or cranes, we need to make sure that the loads are fully secure and there's no potential of them shifting during the movement and during the lifting and loading of any material. The final three key critical risks on this project are relevant to our own choices and our own action and our own responsibility. So physical fatigue is a very key critical risk on this project. Given the long hours and the long shifts that we're doing here on this project, we're currently operating 24/7 before we head into the event. So fatigue is an ever-present factor. The reason why key physical fatigue is a risk on this project, given how prevalent it is that when the human body becomes fatigued, we don't make good decisions. The brain becomes fatigued, the body becomes tired, our capacity to make good decisions diminishes. This happens with all people. Doesn't matter how fit or how clear of mind you are. When we become tired, we don't make good decisions. We become foggy in our decision making, and in this compromised state, we're likely to make a mistake. We make a mistake when we're fatigued. We may not hurt ourselves. We may hurt somebody else as well in the workplace. So we need to understand if we're tired and we're becoming fatigued, then we're monitoring and we're managing that risk associated with that. That's what the welfare facilities are there for. The welfare facilities are there on site to be resting adequately, taking the right breaks, eating the right food, drinking plenty of water, and getting the rest that we need to mitigate against any fatigue factors on site. Psychosocial stress is a similarly linked risk on this project. Psychosocial stress is the transfer of stress. It's the transfer of stress from the workplace to home and back again. So on this project, there's a lot of pressure to deliver on time. We're all under an immense amount of stress and pressure. Most of us are professionals and able to manage a certain level of stress in the workplace and in our jobs. However, what we do is when we come home from work and we're stressed out, that can stress our friends and family out as well. We don't like that our work activity can stress out our friends and family. That stresses us out. And then what happens is we come back to work the next day, more stressed than we were the day before. So this stress keeps building throughout the week, and equally like fatigue, as fatigue increases throughout the day and throughout the week, so does psychosocial stress increase throughout the day and throughout the week. And when we become stressed, we also don't make good decisions. When human beings become stressed, we become more selfish, we become more aggressive, more likely for conflict, and we cut corners and make risky choices. So we need to make sure that if we're both becoming fatigued and stressed, that this is definitely impacting our decision making and our behaviour on site, which now makes us a risk on the project. So we need to make sure that we're managing our stress and our fatigue and making sure we're not a hazard to other people in the workplace or ourselves. And the last key critical risk here on the project is what we call manual handling. Without going into all the details around safe work practices for manual handling, what we do emphasise is that on this project, there is no Superman bonus. You don't get paid more for lifting more on this project, you just get hurt. So it's important to understand that nobody's overexerting themselves when it comes to manual handling, and they're lifting with inside their capacity. If it's too heavy to lift, then it's too heavy to lift. We need to make sure that we're working together and doing team lists and using mechanical aids for any manual handling. There's no reason on this project for anybody to be injured from any kind of manual handling work. When we talk about supplier requirements, when it comes to health and safety documentation on this project, these 3 critical documents must be in place at all times as a bare minimum for safety compliance for all contractors working on COP28 for identity. The first document is the risk assessment method statement. What this document is a document that tells me step by step how you do what you do, what hazards are present during your work steps, and what risk controls you're putting in place to mitigate against those. These method statements must be COP28 project specific. They must be relevant to the work activity you're doing, and they must be available to all workers in the work area. Having a health and safety officer inspect for this document and have the answers being that we've emailed it to identity or it's in the boss's office is a non-conformance, and these documents must be on site with the workforce. It's their document. It explains to them step by step what they need to be doing and what risk controls they need to be putting in place. Equally important is the permit to work. Suffice to say, on this project, there are a significant number of permits required, both across both venues. It's important to understand that you don't need to be an expert in what all the permits are, but what we do expect you is to take 5 minutes before you start your work activity and check with a member of the production team if you need a permit for your work activity. It's very much likely that you do. So rather than take 5 minutes to ask the question and confirm if you need a permit, then to wait 5 days because you started the work activity and now we have been delayed because we have to get a retrofitted permit after the fact. And the third important document here is the activity briefing. Could be a pre-start form or a toolbox talk, but what it needs to be is a documented evidence that an activity briefing was done at the start of every shift. So it's conducted with all the workers before starting each of the work activity, where they discuss the risks associated and with the work activity, the current risks on the project, and how they'll be managing it. It needs to be recorded on an activity briefing form. If your company doesn't have one can be provided to you. And it must also be consulted with identity, production, and the health and safety team. The reason why these 3 documents are in place are for 2 main critical reasons. One being that in the event of an incident, the first question that always gets asked is, what did you do to prevent it? The way you answer that question is by producing these 3 documents. If you can produce it, you have documented evidence of a safe system of work, you had the authority to do the work, and you consulted with the workforce before you did the work activity. This is significant mitigation against any fault from the incident to show that you had everything in place to try to ensure a safe and healthy workplace. If you don't have these documents in place, the likelihood that the incident will be deemed your fault will be because you failed to have a safe system of work, the authority to do the work, or consulted with the workforce. So for your own sake, for your own company's compliance on this project, please make sure these 3 documents are in place. The other reason why these documents are important on this project is because Identity's health and safety team, the event organizer COP28, both venues are the Expo City Dubai and the Dubai Exhibition Centre, Dubai Municipality, Dubai Police, Dubai Civil Defence, and the United Nations all have representatives on the project, and all will be watching the work activity on site at all times. At any moment, any one of these could also approach you while you're working here during the blue zone and ask for the work activity you're doing to assess that if you're working safely. When any of these external health and safety stakeholders approach you, they will also ask to see these 3 documents. So they'll want to see your safe system of work, they'll want to see you have authority to do that work, and they'll want to see what you discuss in your morning briefing. Fail to produce these documents will also result in a non-conformance against these external stakeholders, and we urge everybody to understand the importance of these 3 documents to health and safety compliance on the project. PPE is a very convoluted issue on this project, but we'll clear it up very clearly here succinctly with this one slide, detailing that everybody required entering the COP28 site must be wearing the relevant PPE. And relevance is the key here when it comes to PPE on a COP28 project, because there's a lot of rules inside some of the venues, 5 points of PPE at all times, but we need to express that this is a temporary event, and we need to make sure that the PPE we're wearing is relevant to the work activity that we're in. It also needs to make sure it corresponds with the phase of the project. So during the build phase, the PPE is different than what's required during the event phase. So at the moment, during the build phase, all on-site personnel must adhere to the following COP28 PPE rules, which is during the build and de-rig phases, everyone working in construction areas must wear 5 points of PPE if you're doing construction work inside the construction areas. This is 5 points is a high-vis vest, steel-toed shoes, a hard hat, safety glasses, and work gloves. 3 points of PPE is required for anyone doing fit-out work inside the fit-out spaces, because this is lower risk work activity than the construction areas. So 3 points of PPE is the high-vis vest, the steel-toed shoes, and the hard hat as well. Additional PPE may be required if you're doing additional high-risk work like harnesses or dust masks, but equally so, some PPE may not be relevant at all. If you're installing carpet or you're painting a wall inside of a completed room, it's not likely you're going to need to wear a hard hat as well. So it will be relevant to the work activity you're doing, but if you're ever in doubt, please make sure you consult with the health and safety officers on site at all times to make sure you're wearing the right PPE. The last and final slide that we discuss here as we wrap this induction process up is recapping the whole process. So we started this induction explaining the relevance of this project and the significance of it, the global magnitude and the attention of the world that we have on it, and the global standards of safety and security that's expected here, not only from the United Nations, but from COP28 and from Identity as well. We've gone how Identity has a significant support force here and health and safety officers to make sure you are working to those standards. We've gone through all the compliance points and how we make sure that we're approaching our work activity with respect. That being said, at this point after this induction, anybody working on site who is working in an unsafe manner has chosen to do it themselves. This conscious choice to work unsafe from your own personal actions means that you now are a risk to the project and an identified hazard. And if that's the case, for any persons who do not comply with the COP28 site rules, you'll first be given a verbal warning to yourself and to your employer immediately upon notice of the breach. The second offence will be a written warning to yourself and to your employer. And the third and final breach will be immediate dismissal from site. This not only applies for a single person, but also for a contractor themselves. If we have the same company breaching the same safety rules, we can't tolerate that on the project, and we'll be following this process and removing you from the project. But equally so, Identity also reserves the right to immediately dismiss anyone from site who is found to be working in an unsafe manner or creating serious or imminent danger. If anybody is creating a dangerous situation on the project, not only are you a danger and a risk to yourself, but you're a danger and risk to everybody else working around you. Everybody has the right to come to work and leave as healthy and safe as they did when they came. And there's no reason that anybody should be put into a dangerous situation or injured in the workplace based on some of these actions. So it's important to understand that we own our actions and we understand our responsibility. We follow the guidelines as required, and we connect with the health and safety officers out on the project and make sure that we're working in a safe process, in which case we'll be able to minimize any incidents of risk on this project, and we'll be able to deliver this project on time and safely, as is the entire objective of all stakeholders here on this project. We'd like to thank you for your time and understand that when you head out onto the project now, you continue to make safe and proceed. We thank you very much for your time and have a great project out there, and we look to see you out there. Thank you very much.